Welcome back to the deep dive. We are getting right into the sources you've shared to cut through all the marketing and find the real story.
And we have a big one today.
We really do. Today we are talking about one of the most famous, most expensive, and maybe one of the most controversial products in the world, Kopi Luwak. You know it as Civet coffee.
It's a name that, well, it just screams luxury, doesn't it? Extravagance. You're talking about coffee that can go for hundreds, sometimes even thousands of pounds.
A pound. It's wild.
It is. But as the articles you sent over make really clear, it's a story that's, wrapped in myth and, frankly, a pretty significant ethical darkness. So our mission in this deep dive is to give you the full picture.
Right.
We need to cover the history, the science behind why it tastes the way it does, and then take a really honest look at what some call the ethical catastrophe of how it's made today. You really deserve to know what's in that cup.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The origin story is, I think, where the whole myth starts, but it's not a story about luxury at all. It's really about resistance.
It is. It starts back in 18th century Indonesia under Dutch colonial rule.
And that colonial context is just, it's everything to the story.
It's absolutely essential. The Dutch planters, they had these strict rules. They completely forbade the local Indonesian farmers from picking any coffee cherries for themselves.
So they're surrounded by this amazing crop, growing it, harvesting it for someone else, and they can't even have a single cup.
None of it. It was about total economic control. Coffee was a massive cash crop, even back then. But, necessity is the mother of invention.
And this is a particularly bizarre invention. What did the local farmers start noticing?
Well, they observed the Asian palm civet. It's a native animal, sort of cat-like, nocturnal, and it loved to eat the ripest, sweetest coffee cherries.
And crucially,
Yeah.
what happens next?
The civet digests the soft, fruity pulp, but the hard inner bean. It passes straight through intact and ends up in its droppings.
And someone, some brilliant caffeine-deprived person, saw those droppings and had a light bulb moment.
Can you imagine being the first one?
I can't. I'm going to clean that and brew it. That is some serious dedication. But it was also a genius way to get around the colonial rules, right?
Exactly. It wasn't stealing the crop directly. It was a workaround born from scarcity and oppression. And then, of course, the Dutch elite eventually found out about it.
And once they tasted it.
The unique flavor, plus the fact that it was so hard to find, that's what drove the price up. That's how it became a luxury item.
But that's the key detail we have to stress. The original product, the authentic Kopi Luwak that built this whole reputation, was always 100% wild-sourced.
Always. And that fact is so important for everything that comes later.
It really is. Okay, so that leads us to the science, which is where it gets really fascinating for me. Because the question is, how does passing through an animal's gut literally, fundamentally change the chemistry of a coffee bean?
It sounds like it shouldn't work, but it's pure biology. The key mechanism here is called enzymatic hydrolysis. It's basically a natural internal fermentation.
So walk us through it. The civet eats the cherry, the pulp is digested, but the bean inside is still protected, right?
Right, it has its parchment layer. But the key is that for about, say, 24 to 36 hours, that bean is just steeping in the civet's digestive juices.
Like a little biological processing plant.
That's a perfect way to put it. And inside that system, you have these powerful proteolytic enzymes. It's a sciencey term, but you can just think of them as these tiny biological scissors.
Okay, so tiny scissors. What are they snipping inside the bean? And why does that affect the taste?
They are specifically targeting proteins. They snip away at the very proteins that are the precursors to bitter flavors.
Ah, so the stuff that only becomes bitter when you roast it.
Exactly. During the Maillard reaction, that high heat process, by basically pre-treating those proteins inside the civet, the final cup is just naturally, measurably less bitter. It's smoother.
So that smooth finish isn't just subjective, it's a chemical fact. Is that the only thing happening?
No, there's a second major effect. The enzymes also change the concentration of certain free amino acids.
And amino acids are the building blocks for flavor and aroma, right?
They are. So by altering them, the process boosts those desirable notes like chocolate and caramel, and it also helps reduce the overall acidity.
Which is why people always say it's easy on the stomach.
Yes. It's essentially a really unique, controlled fermentation. It's nature's way of processing the bean before we even get to it. The science really does back up the flavor claims.
So with that science in mind, let's talk about the flavor versus the price racket. If you're spending 50 quid on a single cup, what should you objectively be tasting?
Objectively, you should get a coffee with incredible smoothness, a really heavy, full body, and very, very low acidity. The flavor notes are typically earthy, nutty, maybe some chocolate. It's a pleasant cup of coffee.
Pleasant, that's the word you're using.
Oh.
But I've seen reviewers or sources hint at this too. They're not always blown away by its complexity.
And that's the catch. In terms of pure flavor quality, it's a bit of a con.
You're telling me people are paying £500 for a coffee that's just pleasantly smooth?
For the most part, yes. Because while it's great at being smooth, the actual flavor spectrum is pretty narrow. It doesn't have those bright, complex, explosive layers of fruit or floral notes that you would find in a top-tier geisha, for instance.
So why does it lack that complexity if the enzyme process is so special?
Because it lacks human control. An expert coffee processor can control fermentation down to the minute, tweaking temperature, humidity, all to bring out specific, wild flavors. The Civet is consistent, which is why it's so smooth, but it's not controlled in a way that creates that top-tier complexity.
So if the quality is good, but not, world-beating, why on earth is the price so high, 15 to 500 pounds a pound?
The price has almost nothing to do with the quality in the cup. It's driven by three other things. One, that perceived rarity from its history. Two, the labor involved in finding actual wild droppings. And three, which is the biggest factor now,
Luxury branding.
overwhelmingly, it's the ultimate status symbol in coffee.
It's a textbook case of selling the story, not the substance. And I read that the production cost for the farmed version is barely higher than normal coffee. The profit margin must be insane.
It is, and that profit motive, that's what leads us directly to the core ethical problem. The substance they are selling has a terrible living cost attached.
Because when the price for an exotic product gets that high,
The industry pivots. It moves from difficult wild scavenging to easy factory farming. And that shift has created an ethical catastrophe that has, for all intents and purposes, destroyed what authentic Kopi Luwak even is.
the demand for a cheaper supply, combined with those insane prices, just created the perfect storm.
A storm that's horrific for the animals. Let's think about the civet's natural life. They are solitary, nocturnal animals. They roam huge territories in the wild.
And their diet is varied, right? Not just coffee.
Oh, absolutely not. They eat insects, small reptiles, all kinds of fruit. Coffee cherries are just a small part of their natural diet.
And what's life like for the farmed civets?
It's a nightmare. They're kept in these tiny, cramped, wire-bottomed cages, often stacked one on top of the other, battery farm style. They're nocturnal animals forced into brightly lit conditions.
That stress alone must be immense.
It is. You see all kinds of distress behaviors.
Yeah.
Constant pacing, self-mutilation, pulling out their own fur. It's brutal.
And the diet? It's completely unnatural. It's just about maximizing output.
Exactly. They are fed almost nothing but coffee cherries. A single-source, nutrient-poor diet that makes them incredibly sick. They get deficiencies, infections. It's just awful.
But here's a key question. Beyond the obvious, horrific cruelty, does that abuse actually compromise the coffee itself, the
Yeah.
product people are paying for?
It absolutely does. A stressed, unhealthy, malnourished civet cannot produce the optimal enzyme action that made the wild coffee special in the first place.
So the whole chemical process we talked about gets broken.
It's compromised. Stress hormones affect digestion. The coffee they produce is inconsistent and, frankly, inferior. You're paying a premium for a product of animal abuse that isn't even the best version of itself.
So for you, the listener, this raises a huge problem. If the vast majority is farmed, how can you possibly know if you're buying the real thing?
And you really can't. That's why animal welfare groups and responsible coffee bodies just say, avoid it entirely. The claims of wild-sourced or cage-free are almost all fraudulent.
There's no way to test it.
Once the bean is cleaned and processed, it's nearly impossible to distinguish a bean from a wild civet from one from a caged sick civet. The supply chain is built to deceive.
So the risk of accidentally funding that cruelty is just too high.
It's far too high. The entire industry, as it currently stands, is just morally bankrupt.
Okay, so what does this all mean for you if you actually like that smooth, low-acid flavor profile? We've shown the science is real. So what are the ethical, affordable, and high-quality alternatives?
And this is the good news. Human ingenuity in coffee has come so far. We can now replicate, and I would argue, far surpass what the civet does, but ethically.
So let's start with the most direct alternative. The sources mention honey-processed coffee.
Yes, or pulped natural. It's a brilliant technique. They strip the outer skin of the cherry, but deliberately leave a specific amount of that sticky, sweet fruit mucilage, the honey, on the bean as it dries.
Ah, so it creates a controlled external fermentation.
Exactly. The sugars and acids from that mucilage get absorbed back into the bean. And because a human is controlling how much honey is left, the temperature, the drying time,
The result is consistent and reliable.
and it delivers what people want. Huge sweetness, a heavy body, and low acidity. All the best parts of Kopi Luwak, but achieved with expertise, not animal suffering.
Okay, so what about for people who just want that specific earthy, deep flavor profile, that classic Indonesian taste?
That's even easier. Just look for the right origin and roast. A good, dark-roasted Sumatran manhiling, for example. These are low-altitude beans, which means they are naturally lower in acidity.
And they have those deep, earthy, chocolatey notes already.
They do. They can perfectly mimic that Kopi Luwak mouthfeel without any special processing at all.
And finally, there's all this new innovation in processing, right? Pushing things even further.
Oh yeah, this is the really exciting stuff. We're talking about yeast-fermented coffees, anaerobic processing, methods where processors use specific microbes in controlled environments to create incredible flavors.
And you get these intensely fruity or incredibly smooth profiles with, and this is key, full transparency.
Completely. All these alternatives just prove that ethical human ingenuity can not only match what the civet does, but it can create flavor complexity that the wild product could never even dream of.
So, to summarize the core findings from this deep dive, the unique flavor of Kopi Luwak is scientifically real. That enzymatic process does happen. But the commercial reality today is an industry that is just. It's built on animal cruelty, on fraud, and on absurd pricing.
The original authentic product has been completely sacrificed for a mass-produced, inhumane status symbol.
A tough but necessary conclusion.
And I think the final provocative thought we want to leave you with is this. When you're looking for status symbols, especially in food and drink, just remember that the most expensive story is very, very rarely backed by the best quality.
That's a powerful point.
And in this specific case, the hunt for rarity has utterly destroyed the product's authenticity and its morality. So the challenge to you is simple. Buy with your conscience, let your palate and your ethics guide your wallet.
A really important thing to consider. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We will catch you next time.